Greg. Hey,
Oh,
Greg.
thank you so much. It is so
Welcome to
great
the
to be here. I
show.
sure appreciate the time and the investment, and I know we're gonna have a great conversation.
I'm excited too.
Me
I'm
too.
looking forward to this. So let's get into it. Why are you telling people to have this ownership mindset? Why is that?
Oh, well, first of all, the sense of people who live with so much out of their control. We live in a world where so much happens that we can't do anything about. And there's often a lot of that uncertainty or frustration or disheartenment that happens just in life. And so when you're able to have an owner's mindset and you go, what am I capable to be responsible for? What can I own? Which, whether it's my attitude, my mindset, my emotions, my conversations, my words, my responses, it just shifts the way you do life. And when you're at work, so that's the broad scope of humanity. When you're at work, I mean, there's a lot of frustration people have with their direct supervisor, especially young leaders. They come in and they're exuberant and they want to contribute in meaningful ways. And they always feel like, man, why is it so hard to do this? And they get frustrated at other people while not fully accepting the responsibility of what they can own. And so over the last 25 years, I've owned investment properties, single family homes in Oklahoma and Texas. And I really came to discover like these mindsets of owners, renters, and vandals that are in the workplace. And so I've kind of taken my experience as a real estate investor and also as a leadership, a person who's been in leadership roles with organizations and kind of merged them together and have been out trying to serve other companies to create spaces where people can buy in because it's the most fulfilling way to do life. It's frustrating when you blame the world around you and you feel like you can't really take ownership of yourself and your choices and your career path because of all these external circumstances. When the reality is that is how life has always been and will always be. There is much more out of our control, much more uncertain, and much more things we can't do anything about. So what we can, man, let's go deep in owning it.
So I like the analogy, Greg, about owners, renters, and vandals. I want
Mhm.
you to break that down further for us. Why this different
Yeah.
analogies?
Here's what I found. And you've been working with organizations, you've been working with people in the career world and pursuing. And Gallup, literally since I've been buying houses, Gallup started doing their annual engagement survey, which people still get excited about. But over the 25 years, so I've taken the 25 years and literally it never moves more than 1 point in either direction each year. And so over a 25 year, it's what is it? 31% of people are engaged over a 25-year span. So they're always like, we want people to be engaged. Same 25-year, 52% are disengaged. And a lot of people are like, how do we move the disengaged to get them engaged? But the number that they miss most is the last number Gallup does, which is 17% over 25 years, 17 to 18%, and those are the actively disengaged. So for me, it's the engaged are the owners, the disengaged are the renters, and the actively disengaged are the vandals. And the way I differentiate that is that the owners bring their heart, head, and hands. They're people who show up, they care, they have a passion, they're using critical thinking, they're using creativity, and they're just bringing their head and heart to it as well as their skills. Renters, who are every other person in the workforce, statistically, for the last 25 years, 50% of people are disengaged at work. So these guys and ladies, they're not bad people. They're not doing bad at work. They're showing up on time, doing the job they need to do, and then when it's done, they leave and they don't think about it anymore. So they bring their hands and they bring their skills, they bring their abilities, and so I mean they're the engine of the American economy, the disengaged. So people get really excited about it. And I'm like, they're doing the work, man. So but what they're not doing is not bringing their heart. They've usually learned, you know what, it's just not worth caring anymore. I tried that when I started out, didn't work out. I used to offer ideas and have thoughts and all things, and I'd share all my thoughts, and you know what? Nobody cared. So I'm just going to show up and do my job. And that's sometimes what happens in organizations is they want people to buy in, and yet the culture itself crushes that spirit out of them. And then the vandals, they're the people who are gossipers, silent saboteurs. They're the people who say, tried that before, it's not going to work, so they don't attempt. They're the ones who say, oh man, we're never going to be able to accomplish that. And so they stifle vision and people's willingness to move forward in the unknown, which is, how you make progress. And they're the kind of people who create division. So vandals create division. So when I work with organizations, I'm always like, everybody's trying to get the disengaged to be a little more engaged. What you really need to do is get the vandals evicted. When you get those people out the house,
Mhm.
all of a sudden the people that are disengaged go, oh, you're not tolerating that behavior? Oh, you're not putting up with that? You know what? I might try to give myself back to it. Because it's not so much that the disengaged don't want to be engaged, it's that they see how the vandals exist and they go, it's not worth it because those guys, they're the toxic people. They're the ones who ruin everything. They're the ones who get away with everything. And so it's just not worth it. And so that's really, and I work with organizations to create these lease purchase options. How do you get renters to buy back in? How do you get them to say, you know what? I'm willing to take the risk to give my heart and mind to service of what we're trying to accomplish in serving clients and serving communities, serving our customers, and that sort of thing.
So, thank you for that, Greg. Why is it that some people are disengaged? I know you mentioned it that maybe over time they are tired, maybe fatigue, maybe they are frustrated. They've been trying all the while, but no one is listening to them. So maybe they just give up.
Pull
So,
back. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's the major reason behind these people being disengaged in the workplace?
Well, it's a multitude of reasons. What tends to happen is, and this is my philosophy, and what you've seen, I'm sure, with young leaders, is people show up day one on a job with an owner's mindset. They want to give themselves to it. They want to prove I'm a good hire. I'm going to contribute in a big way. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to help. Like they have all this energy towards caring
Mhm.
about their work and their workplace and their colleagues and how they're serving. And so again, that's my philosophy that most people, the majority of people start out day one at a job with an owner's mindset. And over the course of time, whether it's their maturity level that says, oh, you don't like my idea, like people will put out ideas and they get shot down. And so it's like, oh, that hurts my feelings. So I'm going to pull back. Which is common. That people have that sense of I've tried, and nobody listens, and so I'm gonna just stop contributing. And once people stop contributing, they stop being committed, and so so that happens. They get frustrated with the tolerance for vandals who tend to get away with things. And so they're like, well, I'll never succeed here because they just let those people do that, and I'm trying to do it right, and they're not. And so they turn into renters that way. Because also it requires heart and mind to bring that ownership thing. They generally determine, like I'd said, it's just not worth it. Like, all of us, here's what happens. All of us in life expect a return on investment.
Mhm.
So whatever we're giving, whether we're bought in fully, whether we're disengaged, whether we own the company, we just started out, everyone is looking for a return. And what tends to happen is people don't get the return on the investment. And I don't mean just financially. I've got a whole E-frog, I call it. It's emotional, financial, relational, opportunity, and growth. And so there are 5 different returns that young leaders and old leaders are looking for as they give themselves to work. It's not just a paycheck, right? Everybody, like that's how you get in the game. Everybody's getting a paycheck, pay fairly, decent benefits, that sort of thing. But it's then, what is somebody willing to make an investment of their heart and mind and life? Are they getting back? And so people find out, like in their emotional life. So some people, way a person gets a return is like they think of themselves as a go-to person. So they're like, I want you to count on me, call on me, and when you do that, I feel really good about myself because that's the kind of person I see myself as. And so if they're getting that emotional return, then they're like, I love being here. But if they live just completely feeling like I don't get to use my best, nobody cares about, and I've got this emotional sense of I'm not valued, then all of a sudden it's like, well, nobody values me. Nobody appreciates what I can bring to the table. Nobody really recognizes what I have. And so instead of having a sense of an emotional boost from their work efforts. They get an emotional drain, and they're just like, I don't want to keep feeling this way. So I disconnect my heart. So I'm just like, I'll just come do my job and not expect anything. Like people can do that in any kind of relationship. It's like that happens in personal relationships. It happens in professional relationships. It's like, I'm not getting the feelings that I would hope would be associated with this. And so I'm not
So,
going to leave the relationship,
yeah,
but I'm going to stay in it. But I'm going to be really guarded. I'm going to be really protective of my heart because I don't like feeling like I'm not enough in this place. And so I'm going to just kind of shut that part off.
uh,
So, like I said, there are a few different reasons that people do that, but it's usually the return on the investment and the benefit of buying in, right? They start out that way because they want to give. After you're there a while, you're like, why am I the one doing all this extra work? Why am I the one trying to make such a difference? Everyone else just seems to be status quo. And so there's many factors that go into it, but that's kind of an overview of it.
yeah. No, thank you for that, Greg. Now, most people, especially when they get hired to a new position, they showed up with passion, they are energized, they want to contribute their best. But over time, day one versus day 500,
Yeah.
fatigue sets in. They may become disengaged. What do you tell these people in terms of how to stay passionate in at day 500 compared as they were on day one? What do you tell them?
There's a few different things. First, the trust. I work a lot with organizations around having trusting relationships. I talk about trust in thick and thin terms. So that idea of you've got to have some absorption, and if your trust is really thin, then you're not going to be able to have these challenging, difficult conversations. Because Gallup also has studies that they've over the years, like people don't leave companies, they leave their boss, right? And that's a consistent, and I think people interpret that data inaccurately because it's always like, man, there's a lot of stinky bosses out there, and everybody's got to
Yeah.
leave them and go somewhere else. And I don't think that's necessarily the case, particularly when you've ever, made progress up the ladder of management and leadership. You're like, it's not that I'm stinky, it's that I have so much more at this purview than I did at this level. And I'm just trying to figure it out. There are people that get promoted all the time. They don't have the skills to lead. And so what happens is people go, that person doesn't care about me. That person, micromanages. That person doesn't, whatever their complaint is, they point it to an individual instead of saying, how can I own this relationship? How can I be responsible? This relationship with my direct supervisor is healthy and strong and productive. Because the reality is, you can go to multiple places and you're going to find people
Mhm.
that aren't awesome leaders, right? There's just a gap in people even, I mean, as time goes on, even more so, just really good leadership characteristics that people have nurtured over the course of time. And so it's really on us to figure out how to manage the relationship
Yeah.
and find out how that person communicates. Like we put it on the leaders. Like when I'm talking, I'm always like, leaders, you're responsible for all of this. But when I'm talking to people at frontline and newly in their career, it's like, man, the burden is on you to figure out how to navigate these relationships of authority in your life because you'll always have authority in your life. You'll
Mm.
always have people that have a place in your life that can impact you by their decisions. So you better figure out how to build good relationships with them. You better figure out how to communicate in a way that gives them a sense of security about your capabilities. You better figure out what motivates them in their willingness. And so, to bring it back to your question, um, that idea of how at day one compared to day 500, because I'm asking people to own it. So it's like, listen, don't blame your company. Don't blame the company's culture. Don't blame your leader. So if you can't blame anything and it's all on you, what are you doing within your microculture? So in the four cubes that you're around or on the floor that you're a part of, how are you making that proximity location culture really healthy? What role are you bringing to that? Because if all you're doing is complaining about your boss and complaining about your resources and complaining about your timelines, well, then you're a contributor to why the culture sucks, right? You're a negative impact on it. And you're like, I don't know why we know nobody does anything. Buddy, take note. You're the one creating some of that. And that's oftentimes people, you don't have that sense of ownership. And so when it's like, hey, listen, remove everything you're blaming, remove everyone you're blaming, remove every excuse they have about we don't have enough money, we don't have enough manpower, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough of any of this stuff. Okay, welcome to work. That's true of every organization. So how do other organizations have these healthy places where people are thriving? So communicate a willingness to have hard conversations with those in authority to you, a commitment to your own sense of character. You've got to have a character that says, I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to create division. I'm not going to gossip about people, or I'm not going to turn into a vandal because I'm angry or I'm dissatisfied and I think all these things. And then lo and behold, look, I'm the one contributing to it. So that happens. And so that idea of how do you stir passion? So then on the positive side, like, it's really incumbent upon people to attach their daily tasks to the meaningful mission. Now again, I like to burden leaders with that. It's a leader's responsibility to help the people they lead see how what they do on a day-to-day basis makes a really positive impact on either their mission as an organization or the community that they serve in or the clients that are a part of their portfolio. That being able to go, hey, you know what I can get my heart into? I might be frustrated with people around me. I might be frustrated with my boss, but man, the people we're serving, the client base, or the work we're doing, what it's going towards, like that has meaning somewhere. And how can I find care for that? So it's because what happens is people stop caring. So
Right.
the person who is like disengaged has to say, where in my life can I re-engage my heart that feels safe, that I feel like, you know what, regardless of what everybody else does, what can I care about so that when I show up every day, it actually matters. Like I can find a little bit of meaning in this work. And that mentality and that intentionality can snowball into really big-hearted work that matters. You got me rambling, man. I'm sorry. You got me. You just give me one question and I get provoked in a,
I,
in a
I, I
variety of
like
ways.
it.
I
I like it.
apologize.
I like it, Greg, especially when you talked about we shouldn't put all the responsibility on the people leader. How do we, and I'm talking about individual contributor, how do they also manage? You talked about character, you talk about communication, and I think all these are very important because I think about a week ago, I was also talking to one of my mentees who is having a challenging moment with his manager. And I was giving him almost exact the same feedback that
Mhm.
so maybe over communicate, maybe try to understand what he wants so that you can meet his expectations. So I completely agree with you there, Greg.
Well, you know what's funny, and I'm sure you've seen this, is like people like they're at this level and they're complaining about their boss or frustrated, and then all of a sudden they get promoted and they go, "Oh, and here, I didn't really see everything you were managing here because all I was doing was very myopic in my own world. And once you get promoted, then you're like, there's a different management scope of responsibility that you
Different
just can't
perspective.
appreciate
Yeah.
here. And so it's like it's a weird, it feels a little weird to say, hey man, you might want to have a little empathy for your boss. Like I
Mhm.
know you don't really get what they're experiencing, what they're hearing from their leadership and what they're not able to communicate down to everyone. And so the kind of the burden of leadership they carry. So extending grace up, like we always talk about supervisor down, right? It's always like the leader down and the leader, but there is and again, in an ownership mindset, it's like, you own this relationship as much as they do. If you want to succeed where you're at, then you better say, I'm responsible for the conditions. So, what's it like to be in that place? And
Yeah.
oftentimes people get promoted there and they go, holy crap, I didn't realize everything they were dealing with because I was just down here dealing with my little world. And so it's an interesting progression that happens as you grow into leadership, the greater appreciation you have for somebody that so frustrated you in one point in your life. And then you're like, holy smokes, they were actually doing a pretty good job with everything else they had going on. And you just couldn't tell it in that moment. So It's an interesting dynamic that transpires that way.
That's good. That's good. So we've been talking about the disengage, how we can help them to become engaged. I want to know what do you say to the vandals, the one that you call actively disengaged,
Yeah.
disruptors. What do we tell them?
Get out.
Get
They
out.
are they are destructive. Yeah,
So
I literally am. I'm gonna arrest and evict.
remedy for them.
I don't try to create a path back. No,
Oh,
because I'm like, listen, you create a lot of damage. Now, here's the irony.
mhm.
Because when you just think about it, you're like, why would anybody let vandals live in their home? Like why would that even be true? And yet over 25 years, 18 to 20%, like it's a 1/5 of the population. And here's what I've found in my work with companies over the last 15 years or so is that vandals exist for four reasons. The number one is they're a revenue generator. They are people who produce cash. And because they do that, they have either a chip on their shoulder or they know, hey, I'm paying for all of your salaries, so quit your whining. They can have a lot of that because they're people who produce the economic engine of the business that is moving them forward. So they're not a team player sometimes. They're considered toxic sometimes because they just don't care about other people. They're like, I'm doing my thing and I'm producing, and that's what matters. And so they're not sometimes not team players. And so, but that's the number one reason because you're like, why would anybody let somebody stay there? Because it's not as easy. And so when I say that a victim, it's not easy for a leader to go, hey, that gal is toxic. We got to get her out of here. Oh,
Yeah,
she's also producing 1/10 of our
yeah,
annual revenue, one
yeah.
person, right? And so it's not easy, and that's what happens is young people, young leaders who don't appreciate the perspective of running a business that has a lot of moving parts to it. They go, I don't know, I don't appreciate how they put up with that, or why they let her get away with that, why she gets to do that, and I because there's a tension there when you're a producer, and so it creates that, and that's leadership has a fine line to balance on, who their stockholders are, that they're responsible to meet whatever goals they have, as well as to keep a healthy culture, and so it's not easy, it's always, my pitch with the leaders is if you'll take the bold step of removing a vandal, even if they're a revenue generator, which they tend to be, excuse me, the people in the disengaged will show up a lot stronger. You're going to move people from disengaged to owners, and that level of passion and care is going to create a momentum of growth that you're not seeing now because they're not going to give themselves fully because of what exists here. And so it's a hard ask. So it's not like it's an easy ask to say, hey, just get rid of those vandals. I mean, the reason they're there is usually because they're producing. The second reason vandals hang out in organizations is because they've been there a long time. And it's really awkward. This is no joke. It's really awkward for leadership to say, listen, this guy is saying and doing things that, we're just crossing our fingers we don't get a lawsuit over. But he's supposed to retire like in the next 2 years. So let's just hold. And so they don't address things. And so there's these veterans who carry a long history. They're almost untouchable, but they're not. And so, but they kind of maintain and they create all kinds of division because people are like, what are we doing around here tolerating that and putting up with that? It's so, 1980s. Like we don't talk like that. We don't act like that. We don't make decisions. Like but it's this tension of also like, we're just hoping they'll get out. And then the third reason they're vandals is because of nepotism. Like it's a pretty favorite idea. Like people they're like ambassadors. Not always. Now here's the deal. None of these are like guaranteed vandals. Like there are a bunch of people. I love family run businesses. I think there's some upsides. Definitely to having family who care and are committed and show up in ways, but also it can be a downside because they know they have, political asylum. They're like, we have a guard here that no matter what we do,
Yeah, we are
we're not
fine.
going to jail for it. Nothing bad is going to happen. And so there's a little bit of that. And the fourth reason that vandals exist is because they're the owner of the company, which is just the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah,
Typically in these businesses, people are like, I was here long before you were. So people in leadership and that have been around, they'll say things, they'll do things that seem a little callous towards people. But the truth is, they've just gone through so much to get to where they are. They're like, I was doing it before you, I can do it after you. And they don't really appreciate the impact of their words or their actions on it. And so they can create divisions. And, some people like to stir up negative competition between their people, and so that's a whole different thing. But that's what I've found. And so obviously not getting rid of top leadership or founding owners anytime soon, but that's why vandals exist in organizations.
No, that's so good. Thank you, Greg.
Mhm.
Now, your message, the core message is that people should start acting like an owner.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you, what are some steps that people need
Well,
to
I
act
do these five
with?
unlocks because I set it up this way where there's like it's not an either or. You're not a renter or an owner or a vandal because there are people who are bought in and they'll say and do something. You're like, boy, that's vandal behavior. You're like, you're not a vandal, but that thing you just did there, you're like you gossiped. You said something about somebody in a setting where that was really inappropriate. Well, it's not a swath of that's you're either a vandal or you're a renter or you're an owner. It's like, man, we can fluctuate because sometimes, and so I have these five unlocks that you referenced at the front. Like those to me are the traits. They're like this is what an ownership mindset brings, and sometimes you move into it, and sometimes you move out, depending on the season of your life, whether you've got elderly parents that now you're responsible for, so your time and heart shift a little bit, or maybe you have some kids that are having some issues in school right now, or maybe you have your own physical health things, and you're like, so it's not like it's this is it and this is it and this is it. It's like, man, it is like everything else in life. It's a moving, dynamic process, and so the five unlocks are the risk bold commitments, activate lasting value, reach for responsibility, widen the circle, and think whole house. And so it's like when you have these five attributes that you're consciously living out, you can do it at any level. Like when you work with young people, I'm like, and young leaders, it's like activate lasting value. How do you make this place better? How do you make others better? And people are like, nobody gives me a budget. No, I don't have any authority. How can I make anything better? Like I'm down here and I don't have any. And I'm like, oh, have I got a solution for you? There are free words. You can use free words. They don't cost you a dime. And you can use words to create value for others and value for yourself. And so within context of the book, there's a lot of strategies because I believe in like, hey, listen, you can be really thoughtful and really intentional about living in each of these attributes consciously for where you're at currently in life and what your capacities are. And so that's it's not like a progression. It's not like start here and end up there. It's not like a pyramid or anything. It's like these are these five because everybody uses what I like about this messaging. Everybody at work uses that kind of phrase. We need you to buy in. We need you to own your role. We need you to, own this, own it. And everybody has a different interpretation of what that can be. It's like that's very subjective. When I'm doing speaking, I'll put up pictures, two different pictures of two families standing in front of two different houses. And I'm like, just by looking at this, which one do you think's the owner? Which one do you think's the renter? And there's all kinds of speculation. And usually what happens is one person says, oh, those bushes are overgrown and that thing is a renter and that guy's bushes, their bushes are all tidy and clean. And somebody else will say, I own my house and my house looks like that. My bushes are overgrown. I don't have time to get to it. So it's like in a workplace, we take the exact same data and say, oh, one person's renting and one person's owning. And so what this message that I've brought tries to create an objectivity. If we want people to buy in, these five unlocks is really kind of a standardization of what that looks like.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Now, where can my listeners find your book?
Oh, listen, it's
Uh,
not out. Well, I'm not sure when our show's coming out, but it releases 1/21/26.
oh,
So that's it's releasing the 1st of January. I've already done a couple pre-sales with teams that I work with, and so we've got it so it can be shipped, but we're doing all the things up right now. So it'll be on Amazon. It'll be on Amazon. Like where else do you want? The hardback, the Kindle, the Audible. I mean, I love the audiobook. The audiobook turned out so exceptionally well. I'm very excited about it,
did you
actually.
read it? Or you got
Oh
some?
yeah, oh yeah, read by the author. Are you kidding me? I loved it, and I loved reading reading it. I had a lot of fun, and so
Okay.
it's done. It's already been approved through ACX. Like all the mechanics of how Amazon works.
Okay,
So
that's
we're already good to go. So I'm excited. So January 21st is when it goes live, and I'm doing a 3-day Kindle sale, doing a big book launch in Oklahoma City, and so very excited about it. Thank you.
okay. I'm gonna check it out. So finally, Greg, if you could give one piece of advice to working professionals, mid-level career people,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how to re-energize them so that they will start acting like an owner, what would you say?
Similar to what I said a little bit earlier, it's on us to direct our hearts and minds to care and to think about the work we're doing or the work and who the work we're doing it for. Because, we're responsible for our own hearts. We're responsible for our own thoughts. As much as thoughts go crazy, we can be really intentional about using that. And so, I think it's I think it's on each mid-level manager, young employee, high potential professional to say, how am I directing my thoughts towards good with the work that I'm doing here and with the people I'm doing it with and the people I'm doing it for? And how am I cultivating a level of care for the people I work with and for the people I'm working for and the end result? How am I making sure I keep my heart positive towards that? Because people can blame and people can get filled with all kinds of stuff, but at the end of the day, our hearts and our minds we're responsible for. So be really intentional about finding those things you can go, I'm going to attach my care to this in my job. I'm going to attach my positive thoughts to this in my job.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Greg. It's
My
been
pleasure.
very, very great having you on the show. I enjoy the energy. I enjoy the message you are sharing. I think everyone needs to hear this. We have to start acting like an owner.
I
The
agree.
owner, that's the message. So thank you for sharing. I love the message. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right.